The Sundance Kid by Platt. Carmen stood behind the Cinemark concession counter, staring absent-mindedly at the popcorn popper, while buttery kernels exploded against the glass. A slow Thursday night so far, with only a handful of patrons trickling in to see galactic baristas. But then again watching a movie about space-travelling baristas saving the universe one coffee at a time. Yes, the poster actually said that. Wasn't exactly her thing, nor did it appear to be anyone else's. She was about to sneak her phone out to check for updates from the Sundance Committee, again, when an all-too-familiar but never-ever welcome voice jarred her to attention. Are my eyes deceiving me? Or is that Carmen Ruiz I see directing the popcorn and sodas? Though I must say it suits you more than the camera. Natalie Sinclair laughed like the bitch she was while leaning against the counter, her perfectly glossed lips curled into a smug smile. She was wearing an oversized pastel hoodie, the sleeves just long enough to cover her hands. A plaid skirt peeked out from beneath the hoodie and was paired with knee-high socks. The whole look seemed thrown together, but it probably cost more than Carmen made in a month passing junior mints across the counter. Carmen resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "What can I get for the nepo baby?" Natalie glared at her. "I'm not here to ingest empty calories. I was just wondering if you've heard my good news about the Emerging Artists program." Her eyes gleamed with barely concealed glee. "I got my official acceptance letter yesterday." "I haven't heard anything," Carmen said in a level voice. Natalie offered Carmen a performative shrug. "I guess my film really must have resonated with the selection committee." Carmen had been checking her email obsessively for days now, waiting for any update on the status of Jaguar Woman, the short film she had poured all the lights and magic she had into over the past year. But it had been radio silence so far. Carmen provided her own shrug. "The submission deadline was just last week. I'm sure they're still reviewing all the entries." "Of course," Natalie said, but there was a slight tinge of pity in her tone. Carmen felt her cheeks flush with heat. Of course Natalie's film got in. Her daddy was a prominent studio executive at Warner, and her mommy a well-known casting director. Every summer since turning 15, she had landed prestigious internships at major studios and production companies, thanks to her parents' connections. For her Sweet 16, Natalie got a state-of-the-art red cinema camera package worth over $50,000. For her Sweet 16, Carmen got the book Making Movies by Sidney Lumet, and she wouldn't have traded it for anything. "It's not like you have a massive leg up with Mommy and Daddy opening all the doors and waiting for you to walk through them." Carmen winced, but she couldn't help herself. Natalie turned her nose up. "Some of us actually have talent, Carmen. Unlike you, I don't need to rely on cheap gimmicks to get noticed. I earned my spot in the program, fair and square." Carmen's blood boiled. Jaguar Woman was not a gimmick. Her short film was a raw, fearless exploration of identity and belonging. The magical realism Natalie thought was a gimmick was essential to the story, and it was all anchored by a magnetic lead performance from her girlfriend, Alana. Carmen had written, directed, and edited the entire thing for less than $1,000. All money made from tutoring, babysitting, and this job, enlisting her friends for help with the production. God, she even learned how to use AI tools to animate certain sequences and enhance the practical effects. "Still waiting for you to congratulate me," Natalie cocked her head. "It's the polite thing to do, you know." "Congratulations, Natalie," Carmen said through gritted teeth. "You must be so proud." "I am." She smiled, tossing her head, then walked off, leaving Carmen seething. "Excuse me." "What?" She turned to look at the pimply boy standing on the other side of the counter, pointing to the popcorn machine. "Please." It came out as a squeak. God, her bitch vibes must be strong tonight. "I got you," she said, softening her tone, then giving him an extra large for the price of a medium. By the end of her shift, she was emotionally drained. She's checked her phone a half-dozen more times. How come Natalie had heard but she hadn't? She clocked out and shuffled to the parking lot to meet Alana, who was waiting to walk her home, same as every Thursday night. Uh-oh. Alana took one look at Carmen's stormy expression and frowned. What happened? Was that guy back? The one who always tries to pay for his large popcorn with a bag of pennies while bitching about the price. Natalie happened, Carmen said, kissing Alana's cheek. They walked along the cracked sidewalk towards home. She stopped by to gloat about getting into the Emerging Artists program. Alana looped her arm through Carmen's. Don't let her get to you. Natalie was sucking on a silver spoon even before she started sucking at making movies. Carmen laughed. Her success doesn't mean anything. It's bullshit. I've told you before, nepotism will only take her so far. I know, Carmen sighed. It's just frustrating. We worked so hard on our short, while Natalie coasted along on her family name and fancy equipment. I mean, she even got a Don Cruz cameo in her film. The whole system is rigged. Alana shrugged. Most systems are. That's why your parents lied about your address to get you into North Hills, because they knew you deserved a great education. You deserve a fair shot with your film too, Carmen. If Sundance doesn't give you that, then screw 'em. You'll find another way. We'll find another way. Carmen gave her a grateful smile, but doubt still lingered like that one flickering fluorescent light in the theatre bathroom that never quite went out. She didn't want to rely so heavily on Sundance as her way out of a dead-end life, but getting accepted could be Carmen's ticket to turning her passion into a viable career. She loved filmmaking, but Carmen also felt the weight of family responsibility. Her dad hadn't worked in 6 months. He'd fallen on a piece of rebar and his leg simply wasn't recovering. And even though her mum juggled multiple housekeeping gigs, they were simply to keep food on the table. College was barely a dot on Carmen's horizon. Assuming she could scrape together the money for tuition, her parents would never understand pursuing film. Not when a steady paycheck mattered more than anything else. They walked the remainder of the way in silence. When they finally reached the sagging porch of the cramped bungalow that Carmen shared with her parents and 3 younger siblings, Alana squeezed her hand. No matter what happens, you have to believe in yourself. Jaguar Woman is special. The right people will see that. I hope so, Carmen said. Carmen gave her a parting hug, then watched Alana disappear around the corner to her house. A second later, the light in the back went on, their signal that Alana had got home safely. Carmen drew a deep breath and entered the house. The TV was blaring, of course, with her little brothers arguing over the remote. Dirty dishes were piled high in the sink. It looked like a restaurant kitchen after a busy Saturday night, minus the industrial dishwasher. "Miha, there you are," said Mum, wiping her hands on her apron. "How was work?" "Same." Carmen pulled a chair out from the kitchen table and sat. A cold tortilla sat on a plate. She tore a piece off and chewed it. Still delicious. "Any word from that fancy film festival of yours yet?" "Not yet." Carmen shook her head. "But I'm sure it's coming soon." Mom set a plate of reheated chicken and rice in front of her. "Don't get your hopes up too high, Carmen. You know how competitive those things are." Carmen picked up her fork. "Yes, I know exactly how competitive. It's good to have a backup plan, that's all I'm saying. That's all you ever say, have a backup plan." "I know, Mum," Carmen said, pushing food around on her plate. Mum threw up her hands and turned to the dishes while Carmen ate in silence, resisting the urge to check her phone. Sundance wouldn't be notifying applicants at midnight. Or would they? Maybe she'd check once more. Nothing. Later that night, after the rest of the house had finally gone quiet, Carmen retrieved her battered laptop from the hand-me-down desk in her room and curled up in bed with her favourite movie. The City of Palaces always brought her comfort. Lush cinematography and a lyrical score that won the composer an Ariel Award. The eye of the camera panned lovingly over the misty canals and Baroque palaces of St. Petersburg, a dream world unto itself. The city's ethereal beauty leapt off the screen, every frame a masterful composition of light, shadow, and colour that transported her far away from her cramped bedroom and the leaden weight of her worries. Directed by the visionary Anton Aquilino, The City of Palaces had ignited her passion for film. Carmen had seen the movie more times than she could count and had memorized every line. She closed her eyes and imagined her own name flickering on the screen. Directed by Carmen Ruiz. During every spare moment over the last year, she had channeled that dream into reality and made Jaguar Woman. Now her proudest creation was out there in the world, her heart laid bare and awaiting judgment. And not just any judgment. Anton Aquilino was on the jury this year. Carmen hugged her knees as the credits rolled, surprised to find herself fighting tears. All she wanted was a chance to prove what she could do, to show everyone, her family, her town, even herself, that she had more to offer than they ever gave her credit for. She took out her phone and opened her email for the 100th time. Spam and industry newsletters with big promises were all that had arrived. She plugged it into the charger, then closed her laptop with a sigh, setting it on her nightstand. Then she burrowed under the covers. Soon, Carmen told herself as she drifted off to sleep. The news would come soon. But even as she succumbed to slumber, a taunting voice drifted into her dreams. You'll never make it, Carmen. You're not good enough. And you never will be. The voice sounded suspiciously like Natalie's. 2 weeks later, it was still radio silence. The anxiety was eating Carmen alive. She couldn't focus on anything else. Job, homework, school, constantly refreshing her email with a mix of anticipation and dread. Alana remained the voice of reason, incessantly trying to soothe her nerves. Stop worrying, Carm. I bet your letter got lost in the mail. These things happen. And when she couldn't take the complaining anymore. Call the festival and check on your application status. God, how come Carmen hadn't thought of that? So she steeled herself and finally dialed the Emerging Artists program, her heart pounding when the line rang. Surely they would view her as passionate, excited and enthusiastic, not as worried, anxious and a nag. Sundance Institute, Emerging Artists program, a pleasant voice said. This is Melissa. How may I assist you? Hi there, Melissa. My name is Carmen Ruiz. I submitted my short film to Emerging Artists, but I haven't heard about my application status. I was wondering if you could check on that for me. Of course, doll. Carmen almost collapsed with relief. What's the name of your short? Jaguar Woman. Thank you, Carmen listened to clacking keys on the other side of the line. She was about to get an answer, but the typing continued. Then silence. I'm just going to put you on hold. 1 moment. Carmen felt a chill go down her back. 1 moment? That couldn't be good, could it? Don't panic, she told herself, but she couldn't help it. She was panicking. And then Melissa came back on the line. I'm sorry, Ms. Ruiz, but I don't see any record of your application in our system. Carmen froze. That can't be right. It was submitted along with several others from my school, and they've all received their acceptance or rejection letters already. How could mine be the only one missing? It's possible it might have been erroneously entered into the system, but I've checked spelling variations on both title and director. I don't understand, Carmen said, trying not to cry. Tell you what, Melissa said, her tone sympathetic yet professional. I'll do a thorough search of our records. Give me your contact details and I'll give you a call back as soon as I have more information. Thank you. Carmen provided her phone number, then ended the call. A knot of anxiety twisted in her gut. She paced her bedroom, trying to make sense of the situation. If everyone else's submissions had made it through, then why was hers the only one unaccounted for? Had Sundance lost it, or had she done something wrong? An hour crawled by with no further word from the festival. She called into work and said she wouldn't be coming because she felt sick. And it was true. Her stomach churned like her life depended on it. Carmen was about to text Alana when her phone buzzed. Utah area code. This is Carmen speaking. She dropped onto the edge of her bed. Ms. Ruiz, this is Melissa. I've done an extensive search and we still can't locate your application. It seems that Jaguar Woman never reached us. That's impossible. I sent it in with everyone else's submissions. I'm sorry. Her vision blurred with sudden tears. What can I do? Nothing this year, I'm afraid, but can't I just send in my submission right now? Her throat was closing up. Even forming words was becoming difficult. I'm afraid our submission window has closed and the judging process is underway. Your best bet would be to reapply next year. Next year? Carmen felt hollow. Reality hit her like a physical blow. She'd be graduated, no longer eligible for emerging artists. But Anton Aquilino is judging this year's competition. He's the whole reason I submitted my film, the reason I even made it. He won't be on the panel next year. I understand your disappointment, Ms. Ruiz, and it did sound like Melissa was sad. But I'm afraid there's nothing more we can do. We wish you the best of luck with your future projects. We? What did that even mean? The line went dead. Carmen threw her phone onto her bed and crumpled onto the mattress. Jaguar Woman was supposed to be her big break, Carmen's chance to prove to everyone, including herself, that she had what it took to make it as a filmmaker. Her phone blipped. Alana. She tried texting her, but couldn't. She felt ashamed, embarrassed, stupid. She buried her face in the pillow, wanting to scream, but not wanting to scare her family. So her voice stayed trapped in her throat. She told her mum she was sick, her period. Otherwise, she'd be subjected to an abundance of fussing. Eventually, she managed to text Alana. Sundance didn't receive my entry. Don't know what I did wrong. And then she cried. Not even 30 seconds later, Carmen heard the front door opening. Dad coming home from his new part-time security job. But moments later, there came a soft knock at her bedroom door. It's me, Alana. Come in, she said, not moving from the bed. Alana peeked her head in, her brow creased with worry. I came as soon as I got your message. I'm so sorry, baby. Carmen sat, wiping her eyes. I don't understand how this could have happened. We worked so hard on that film. And I was so careful with the application. You're always careful. Alana entered and closed the door behind her. She perched on the edge of Carmen's bed and took her hand. But I think I might know what happened to your submission. Carmen frowned. What do you mean? I got off the phone with Javier just before you texted and he told me something weird. Weird how? He saw Natalie alone in the room where the festival submissions were being collected. And get this, she was holding a film when she came out. He didn't think anything of it at the time because he thought it was probably hers, but now... A cold dread washed over her. You don't think... I do. Alana's jaw tightened. I think that jealous bitch sabotaged you. Natalie knew your film was better than hers, so she made sure the festival never even saw it. The pieces fell neatly into place, including Natalie's smug attitude at the theatre. That conniving little... I know. Alana squeezed her hand. But we can't let her get away with this. We have to do something, Carmen shook her head. There's nothing we can do. Melissa at the Emerging Artists Office said submissions are already closed and the judging process has started. Then fuck Sundance. Carmen sucked back air and they both crossed themselves. Then Alana grinned. What I actually mean is that I'm sure we can find some other way to get your film in front of Anton. Carmen met her determined gaze. Maybe this wasn't the end of the road. Maybe there was still a chance to make her dream a reality. What's our first step? Carmen asked. How do you feel about confronting that bitch? Carmen gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles were bone white, her jaw clenched with barely contained rage. She had been pickling in her anger the entire drive to Natalie's sprawling mansion, rehearsing exactly what she would say to the backstabbing harpy when she confronted her. Alana sat in the passenger seat, fidgeting with the hem of her jacket. Maybe we should wait. I mean, we don't have any actual proof that Natalie sabotaged your submission. This was your idea, Carmen reminded her. I figured we would come up with a plan, take our time, be smart about... This is smart. I know she did this. I feel it in my gut. Instinct isn't proof. No, but I'm going to make her admit it to my face. Carmen parked haphazardly in Natalie's circular driveway, then got out of the car and marched up to the front door. Alana trailed behind her. Natalie's home was an opulent three-story estate with towering columns, expansive windows framed by luxurious drapes, and a grand entrance flanked by meticulously manicured hedges. There was even a fountain out front. She jabbed the doorbell with her thumb and listened to the obnoxious chime of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony echoing through the cavernous foyer. A moment later, a woman wearing an apron answered the door. "See?" Carmen had intended to be rude, but she couldn't, not to the help, so some of her anger dissipated. "Natalie, por favor." The woman smiled. "Un momento." She then disappeared. A few moments later, Natalie arrived, dressed head to toe in brand new Lululemon, dewy from a workout. "Carmen, what a surprise," Natalie said in a voice dripping with saccharine. "To what do I owe this pleasure?" Carmen stepped forward, intentionally invading her personal space. "Cut the crap. I know what you did." A smirk. "And what did I do?" "You stole my film from the Sundance submissions package." "I have no idea what you're talking about." Natalie laughed, a practiced look of innocent confusion swallowing her face. "Why would I do that?" "Because you're a jealous, conniving bitch who can't stand the thought of anyone being better than you," said Carmen. She felt Alana's hand on her shoulder. A silent, subliminal message to calm down. "Please." Natalie scoffed, tossing her sweaty yet still perfectly styled hair over her shoulder. "I don't need sabotage to get ahead. My film speaks for itself." "Javier saw you." Something flickered in Natalie's eyes, a flash of panic, there and gone before her mask slid back into place. "Javier is mistaken. I would never get my manicure anywhere near your amateurish little project." Carmen's hands balled into fists at her sides. "You lying sack of—" "Okay, I think we're done here," Alana said, digging her fingers into her shoulder. "Come on, Carm, she's not worth it." Natalie stepped back and slammed the door. The house reverberated. Carmen let Alana lead her back to the car. She got in and slammed her own door before screaming in frustration, pounding her fists on the steering wheel. All that effort, 100 late nights and all those long weekends. And for what? For Natalie to just erase Jaguar Woman like it never even existed. And you were sublime. Everyone needs to see you act. "I'm so sorry, babe. I know how much this meant to you." Alana pulled her into a reluctant hug. "There's always next year, right? You can submit again and—" "It won't be the same," Carmen said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "Anton Aquilino is judging now. This year was my one shot to get my work in front of my idol, and now it's gone." And then she finally let the dam go, bursting into tears. Alana held her tight, until a security car pulled up behind them. "We should go," Alana said. Carmen nodded, wiped her face, then pulled out of Natalie's driveway. How could a person crush another's dreams with so little remorse? Who even thought of doing that in the first place? "I should sneak the film into the festival myself," Carmen said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Alana laughed. Then, in a serious tone, she said, "How exactly would we do that?" Carmen looked at her. "You serious?" Alana shrugged. "Why not?" Carmen thought for a moment. "Like a reverse heist or something. We slip Jaguar Woman into the lineup and bam! It's there on screen. Can you imagine Natalie's smug face when it starts playing in the packed theatre? Priceless. That would be pretty epic. But it's not like we can just waltz into a projection booth at Sundance and splice the film into the reel." "No." Carmen chewed on her lower lip, thinking. "What if we signed up as volunteers for the festival? We'd have access to all the behind-the-scenes areas, including the screening rooms. All we'd need to do is befriend the projectionist, and then when the time is right—" "We make the switch," Carmen finished, her heart now pounding with the thrill of possibility. "It's risky as hell, though. If we get caught, I could be blacklisted from Sundance for life. Not exactly great for my career." True, Alana said. But consider the payoff. If we can pull it off, Anton Aquilino will be watching your masterpiece on the big screen just as was intended. Another long silence before Carmen laughed and said, "Fuck it. Let's do this." Over the next few weeks, Carmen and Alana threw themselves into their new roles as Sundance volunteers. They completed hours of online training, learning everything from crowd control to emergency protocols. They specifically requested working the emerging artist screening and were approved by Melissa herself, who no doubt felt sorry for Carmen. She sent them maps of the facility, and they identified every exit, hiding spot, and potential route to the projection booth. They befriended the festival's projectionist on the Facebook group, a laid-back film school grad named Barrett, bonding with him over a discussion of whether any prints of London After Midnight still exist. Carmen felt a twinge of guilt for exploiting his kindness, but she shoved it down, deep, reminding herself that this was her one shot to make her dreams a reality. And then what after felt like an eternity of preparation and a long drive to Park City, Utah. The festival date finally arrived. Even with Alana by her side, Carmen's stomach was a mess of knots when she reported for her first shift. They assumed their positions in the theatre lobby, with Carmen scanning the arriving crowd for any sign of Natalie. But then she caught a glimpse of Anton Aquilino himself, looking every bit the brooding auteur in his black turtleneck and Buddy Holly frames that were slightly too big for his face. She almost stopped breathing. Carmen's palms were slick with sweat. This is really happening. No turning back now. A shrill voice cut through the buzzing crowd. "What are you doing here?" Carmen froze, then turned to see Natalie striding toward her with a snarl on her glossed lips. "I knew you were desperate, Carmen, but I never took you for a gate crasher." "I'm not crashing anything," she replied through gritted teeth. "Alana and I are volunteers. We have every right to be here." "Volunteers? Please." Natalie rattled out a disbelieving laugh. "I know you're up to something." She leaned in close with a venomous voice. "And if you think you're going to weasel your way into meeting Anton to badmouth my film to him, think again. I'll be stalking you like an ex on Insta." Then she spun on her heel and marched away. "Ignore her," Alana said, giving her arm a reassuring squeeze. "Focus on the mission." Carmen nodded, drawing a deep, steadying breath. Alana was right. She couldn't let Natalie get under her skin, especially not now that they were so close to pulling off their plan. When the house lights dimmed and the first film of the showcase began to play, they slipped away from their posts. They made their way through the deserted hallways toward the projection booth. Carmen was about to knock on the door when she hesitated. "I can't." "Why not?" Carmen looked at her. "What if he gets fired? Because of me? I couldn't do that to him. How am I acting any different than Natalie?" Alana nodded. "All right, let's reconsider. Maybe we just make a meeting with Anton. Ask him to watch it." Carmen nodded. Then the door opened. Barrett stood there, holding an ancient issue of Fangoria. "I thought I heard voices. What are you two doing here?" "Nothing," Carmen said, shaking her head. He glanced down at her hand, spotted the flash drive. "What's that?" Carmen didn't know what to say. Alana snatched it from her fingers. "This is Carmen's film for emerging artists. Only a jealous classmate sabotaged it, and so her film never got submitted. It's an homage to Anton." Barrett stared at them. "It's a London After Midnight." Carmen blinked. "Kind of." Barrett grinned, held out his hand. "Give it to me." Alana handed it over. "I don't want you to get in trouble," Carmen said. Barrett stared at her. "How?" "I don't know where it came from. It just showed up. I thought I was supposed to run it." Carmen blinked back tears, then gave him a hug. "Go on," he said, "before the cinema police get here." "I don't think that's a thing." Carmen wiped her eyes. He grinned, tossing the drive in the air. "Your short will play right after the next one ends. Better get back out there before anyone notices you're gone." But they did as he said, skedaddling. Carmen threw her arms around Barrett again. Thank you so much. I won't forget this." Then she and Alana raced back to the theatre, giggling like preschool kids. They slipped into the theatre just as the lights came up for intermission. Carmen directed guests to the washrooms. Her heart pounded like a drum major's solo. It seemed to take both forever and arrive in the blink of an eye. And then the lights finally dimmed again, and there it was. Jaguar Woman, in all her glory, playing for the world to see, or at least everyone here in the theatre at Sundance. Carmen thought she might die of happiness, or terror. Carmen watched, transfixed, listening to the audience gasp and laugh and sigh in all the right places. She'd positioned herself so she could see Anton's face, loving the way his eyes widened and his lips quirked with appreciation. She had no idea where Natalie was, and she didn't care. This was Carmen's moment of triumph. And nothing, not Natalie's sabotage or the festival's rules or the world's expectations, could take that away from her. Alana gripped her hand, and Carmen turned and kissed her. She couldn't have done it without her. Then the final scene faded to black, and a shrill voice rang out over the applause. "This isn't fair!" Carmen froze. That was Natalie. The lights came up. Natalie stood in the lower aisle, her face contorted with rage. "That film wasn't approved for the showcase." Natalie jabbed an accusing finger at Carmen. "She snuck it in like some kind of cinema terrorist." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Eyes turned to Carmen. She felt the blood drain from her face, her triumph evaporating like mist. A woman in a headset approached Carmen. Melissa, flanked by 2 burly security guards. Carmen's legs felt like jelly. "I can explain." But Melissa said nothing, and Carmen walked toward the exit with Alana trailing close behind. Out in the lobby, Melissa turned to face her. She looked disappointed. "I'm afraid I have no choice but to ban you from Sundance, Carmen." "For this year?" Her voice was shaking. "For life." Carmen felt like she had been punched in the gut. Banned? For life? But this was her dream. Her chance to... Tears spilled from her eyes. "She sabotaged me." "And you sabotaged the festival." "True." Melissa turned to Alana. "Look after her, will you?" Alana nodded and took her arm. Carmen let herself be led out of the theatre in a daze, past the gawking crowds. No sign of Natalie or Anton. She had blown it. The long drive home was a blur of tears. Carmen barely remembered stumbling into the house. She ignored everyone, going straight to her room and collapsing onto her bed. Carmen lay staring at her ceiling for Lord knew how long before she heard a soft knock at her door. "Mija, can I come in?" Carmen didn't answer, but the door creaked open anyway. Then the mattress dipped as her dad sat beside her. "Alana told me what happened." He set a calloused hand on her shoulder. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." "I ruined everything," Carmen said, her voice choked with tears. "I had one shot, and I ruined it. I'll never be a filmmaker now." "Now you listen to me, Carmen Ruiz." His voice was firm but gentle. "This is a detour, not the end of your dream." Carmen opened her eyes, red-rimmed and swollen. "But Sundance, the ban." "Sundance is not the only film festival in the world, and certainly not your only path to success." He smoothed a strand of hair from her forehead, just like he used to do when she was little. "You have a gift, Carmen. A true talent. And nothing, not some snotty rich girl or a bunch of stuffy festival rules, can ever take that away from you." She sniffled, sitting. "You really think so?" "I know so." He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Your abuelo came to this country with nothing. No money or connections, barely a word of English, but he had a dream and determination. Look at our family now." He gestured around at the modest but comfortable room. "We may not have much, but we have each other. And I have faith in you, Mija." A fresh wave of tears sprang to her eyes, but for the first time all night, they were tears of gratitude. She buried her face in his shoulder. Thank you for believing in me. Always. Now get some sleep. We'll sit down as a family in the morning and figure out our next steps. Together. Carmen nodded with a watery smile. Together. He kissed her forehead and stood to leave, pausing at the door. Remember what you always say to me. If the story isn't ending, then it's only a plot twist. Carmen laughed. But when the door clicked shut behind him as Carmen found hope fading, maybe it was time to face the cold, hard truth that she simply wasn't cut out for this. Not everyone was meant to chase their dreams. Carmen trudged into Cinemark, adjusting the collar of her uniform. When she clocked in, Dave waved her over. I need you to cover Theatre 7 today. We have a private screening. I want you on the door in case the attendees need anything. Carmen nodded. They usually didn't have private screenings so early in the day. She made her way to Theatre 7, her mind still sorting through the last few weeks since Sundance. It all felt like a terrible dream. Only she couldn't wake up from it. She pushed open the theatre door, surprised to find the lights already dimmed. A film began to play, with a familiar soundtrack. Wait, was that? No, it couldn't be. She walked in farther so she could see the screen. Somehow, Jaguar Woman was playing, and the theatre was far from empty. In fact, every seat was taken, and standing in the front row waving at her. Mom? Carmen said, though it sounded more like a croak. Surprise, Mika! Carmen walked over and was pulled into a bone-crushing hug. We wanted to do something special for you after everything. But how? I don't... Shh. Her father took her hand, pulled her to the empty seat between them. Watch the movie, Carmen. We'll explain after. So she did, sitting between her parents, watching her movie. It had never looked so good. She'd watched it countless times, of course, but never with family. When the final scene faded to black, the theatre erupted into thunderous applause. Everyone was on their feet, clapping and cheering for her work. She spotted Alana next to her father, a cheeky grin on her face. Then the house lights came up and she saw him, sitting right behind her with his signature turtleneck peeking out from beneath a leather jacket. He leaned forward and extended his hand. Carmen Ruiz, I presume. Anton Aquilino. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. She took it, squeezing his fingers. I don't understand. What are you doing here? How did you... His eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. Melissa contacted your school, who confirmed your film had indeed been part of the original submission package, and if it wasn't in our possession, well, it doesn't take a genius to connect the dots. So she got a hold of your parents and together they arranged this. And Natalie? Carmen breathed. Disqualified. Her mum patted her shoulder, gestured to the audience. Teachers, classmates, friends, neighbours. They were leaving the theatre. You talk. We'll meet you in the lobby, Carmen. She nodded, then turned back to Anton. I can't believe this. Believe it, Anton said, his tone turning serious. Now, in your application, you listed The City of Palaces as your favourite film, and yet Jaguar Woman is nothing like it. Most young filmmakers, when citing an influence, tend to imitate it in some way. But you went in a completely different direction. Why is that? Carmen felt her throat tighten with emotion. I do love The City of Palaces. That movie taught me what magic filmmaking could be. But I guess I wanted to find my own voice, my own style, to tell the kinds of stories that resonate with me. Can I let you in on a little secret? He chuckled and lowered his voice. I can't stand The City of Palaces. What? Carmen stared at him. He grinned. Oh, I know it's supposedly my masterpiece, but honestly, I think that film is pretentious drivel. I was young and trying so hard to be profound. He shook his head ruefully. But you, Carmen, what you've created with Jaguar Woman, that is truly something special, raw and honest and utterly unique. You have a voice that deserves to be heard. I don't know what to say. Thank you, Carmen felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Thank you so much. No need to thank me. He waved off her gratitude. You did all the hard work. I just had the good sense to recognize talent when I saw it. Now, I believe there's a reception in your honor being held out there. Shall we join the others? Carmen nodded, still half convinced she was dreaming. Just before they left the theatre, Anton paused and turned to face her again. I meant what I said, Carmen. You have a gift, and I'd like to help nurture it. How would you feel about a position as a production assistant on my next film? It's long hours and the pay is reflective of our smaller budget, but you would be up to working directly with me. Yes, of course. Anton didn't need to finish. I would be so honoured. He smiled. Excellent. And in return, I would love to help you develop Jaguar Woman into a feature. I think it has potential to be something truly extraordinary. Carmen felt like she might faint. This couldn't be real. It was too much, too fast. But looking into Anton's eyes, she saw only sincerity. He believed in her, saw something in her work worth investing in. I don't know how to thank you. It was all Carmen could manage. By creating, by telling your stories. That's all the thanks I need. Now go celebrate. My assistant Noelle will be in touch with all the details tomorrow morning. Carmen nodded. Then he gave her parents a wave and headed toward the doors. Carmen watched him go, her heart full enough to burst, and then she was enveloped in a tight hug, and Alana was planting kisses all over her face. Your dream came true. Carmen closed her eyes, committing every detail of the day to memory. The laughter, the tears, the triumphs, all of it would fuel future stories. She was ready for whatever came next. Carmen Ruiz, director, storyteller, trailblazer, filmmaker, the Sundance Kid.